take a bite out of crime.
Police, what's going on by 515th Street? What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
It was the morning after Christmas, 1996, when a horrifying mystery started to emerge from a home in peaceful Boulder, Colorado. 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey was missing. A frantic 911 call, a ransom note, and with hours, a horrifying discovery. Nearly 3 decades later, questions remain about this cold case that still grips true crime fans everywhere. Today, we revisit one of America's most haunting unsolved cases and what it can teach us about crime prevention and what you can do to stay safe. Welcome to True Crime Prevention, the podcast that melds true crime with real solutions. Let's expose how all crime starts the same way, with a chance. Today, we won't give it a chance. I'm Paul DelPonte. I work at Gruff the Crime Dog. Thank you for joining us. Well, we've got a special treat for you, and for those of you who are regular viewers, I'm sitting right with my favorite crime pup here at the National Crime Prevention Council, Tatiana, who's joining me to unpack this episode. Before we get into that, let's all click like and subscribe. Let's fill up the comments. McGruff Nation, you're with us. Well, thanks again, Tatiana. Thanks for doing this with me today.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to be back.
It is. And this is our holiday bonus. And we're going to unpack something as the lights are all aglow and the Yule log is firing away there. Something that happened right around the holiday time. And as soon as I say the name, it was the day after Christmas, 1996, Boulder, Colorado, a young child, JonBenét Ramsey.
That's right.
It
Big
was
story.
Big story. I mean, I think everyone knows that name. It's hard to believe if she was still alive, she'd be like 35 today.
I know.
Crazy
how time flies.
Before you were born.
I know. Are you just giving away my age?
I didn't do that on purpose, but you're wise beyond your years.
This is a big one. In the
It is a big one.
space.
I mean, I don't think anybody is not familiar with the name JonBenét Ramsey. Then I think the knowledge goes down, obviously, after the name and the case. But to say that this case captivated national interest is probably the understatement of the century.
Correct. Yeah. It was probably one of the first big media frenzy stories that we had.
It was a feeding frenzy. I think the only one that might rival it was O.J. Simpson's white Bronco chase on the LA freeway.
Right.
There you have it. And I think one of the reasons for it, the early evidence and the early thinking by the police department, the prosecutors focused on the parents.
Right.
And then as we'll get into more of the details, but as the evidence unfolds, that became less so. But, it's funny, I think when we talk about one of these cases that is just so well known, I'm thinking that our viewers out there are probably going through their head, well, what are they going to tell me that I don't already know or already haven't heard about?
Right.
So we're going to do this a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
We're going to focus on your house, your own safety.
Yes. The prevention.
Because I think once it started unfolding that, maybe it wasn't parents, that made a lot of people really scared.
Yeah. And I think if you look at updates, they're maybe getting a little closer to figuring out what happened.
Someday, you never know. I mean, I think technology and the improvements in DNA has been helping a lot.
Right.
But so it's piece by piece, little by little, things are coming out to the forefront. So let's go back to 96, Boulder, Colorado. It was early in the morning, about 5:52 a.m., according to police report. JonBenét's mom, Patsy, placed a 911 call saying JonBenét, her 6-year-old daughter at the time, was missing and that she found a note inside the home. And that phone call, that 911 call, is what unleashed sort of that media feeding frenzy. 3 decades later, we're still talking about this case. Before we talk about the investigation, I think it's really important. And I think because of all the media attached to this case, all the photos of this bright, smiley young girl in her dancing outfits because she loved to dance. We forget a little girl life was taken through a notorious murder. And I don't think as a society, we can ever lose sight of that.
Yeah, she was only 6 years old.
6 years
She was, really outgoing, full of personality, much like a lot of
A
6-year-olds
lot of
that I know.
6-year-olds, right. I mean, full of life. She loved to perform, and that was a factor in the suspicions and in all the other things that circled around all the cameras parked out in front of the house and all the people sort of playing armchair quarterback, second guessing and wondering what was going on. This was a child. She loved to perform. And I think one of the things from all the photos that we've seen over her during all the coverage around the case and the investigation and all the post investigation was you were really struck by this was a young girl who sort of had that talent, a latter day Shirley Temple, so to speak,
Yeah.
just bright and smiley and had that promise of,
Yeah, in reports, she was described as bubbly, affectionate, someone who just really liked being the center of attention like most kids do.
yeah. And, the neighborhood itself, Boulder, Colorado, a nice city in Colorado. I've got several friends who live there and they all love it there. The neighborhood itself, a nice neighborhood. People knew their neighbors and, all the kinds of things you look for and you hope for in a neighborhood. And, there she was performing piano lessons. She was very close with her older brother. A lot of people forget crime is always more than one point in time and always more than one victim. The entire family was victimized. The entire community was victimized. Like I said, more than one point in time. Like I said, 3 decades. This is still captivating people's minds.
Yeah. And I heard she loved to perform because she was in pageants and her mom often attended those pageants with her and was
Absolutely
really
right.
involved.
For those who are parents out there and you've got a child in dance class and all of that, it's a lot of mom and dad shuttling and chauffeuring around from recital to recital, rehearsal to rehearsal. So a big part of not just JonBenét's life, but the family's life. As we get into it, it was her identity. I mean, that's a big part of it. I think a lot of parents today, your kids in gymnastics, dance, piano, any number of different things, but it is the unusual child where it becomes such an identifying characteristic
Yeah.
in a part of their life.
And I think that's why it's so important to talk about these things and to remember her in that way because true crime has such a way of sensationalizing so much that we often forget who the victims were. And it's easy to turn something like this into entertainment. And that's really not what it is. Like, we really want to do a good job honoring her and making something come out of this that can be positive for others.
And as I always like to say for our viewers out there, McGruff the crime dog likes everybody. Even if you make a mistake, he's going to forgive you. But one thing will really, really make McGruff say, we think we need to go outside and have a little chat. It's if somebody discounts, blames, or second guesses the victim.
Mhm.
We have to respect and honor the victims because doing that, not only does it make moral sense to do that, but it also, from a law enforcement perspective, you listen to the victim, even if the victim is no longer with us. If you follow that trail, you're going to get closer to the true people behind the crime. And if you let other things get in the way of that, that's when your path goes wrong. And I think this is a case where that happened. There was this initial focus on the parents and only the parents.
Right.
And we still don't know, even though the parents have sort of been exonerated by a lot of the newer DNA evidence that's come out. We don't know that for sure.
Right. Right. I don't think anyone will know until law enforcement finally puts everything there.
And I think someday we're optimistic that there will be a full and complete DNA match.
Yeah. So let's walk through what we know officially happened in the timeline.
Let's. We want to move, like I said,
The 911 call is made.
911 call is made early that morning. Shortly after that call, police arrive promptly, as police do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's where I think things take a turn, because
Yeah.
when officers arrive, the neighbors arrive, I'm sure as a family they called, somebody they
Right.
trusted, and now you have people moving throughout the whole house.
That's one thing. Having, I in this job, obviously, I get to talk to a lot of police officers, and the one thing I hear over and over again from police officers that people don't realize how chaotic a crime scene can be, even something as simple as a traffic accident, which oftentimes is not that simple. You pull over a car on the freeway and you don't realize all of a sudden you've got rescue vehicles pulling up, you've got other cars still zooming by, not slowing down, even though they see flashing lights. You worried about maybe if somebody on the scene is going to flee. Other passerbys stand by and come in. And that's sort of what started happening with this case, right? It was, the neighbors start coming over. This is that peaceful neighborhood where you don't usually see police activity. And so people are getting concerned, involved, which is both concern and involvement is a good thing, but getting in the way of things.
Yeah, or contaminating the crime scene as they're trying to figure out what happened. And I think that's why this case is now taught in police academies today, because they did have so much foot traffic in the house as the police were investigating that early morning
Yeah,
very
that's right.
quickly.
And you know what I learned? I was speaking at a conference and somebody told me this podcast, believe it or not, surprised me. One of the police departments is using it in training new officers because one big important part. It's really hard to teach police officers about understanding the importance of the victim, and that we do a good job of that. So I'm
That's good.
happy with that.
Yeah.
And let's again, given the fact that we are talking about such something as sensationalized as the JonBenét Ramsey case, that it's important not to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
So you've got all this, and then it seems like it was almost a nanosecond when the media starts showing up.
Yeah. And let's talk about that because I think it was unlike anything most people had ever
I
seen
mean,
before.
like I said, the only thing in my lifetime that I can equate it to was the media frenzy around O.J. Simpson. And
Yeah.
so it's way up there. I mean, I think it was probably the first of the really big 24-hour news cycles that lasted so long. I mean, with OJ, after the white Bronco chase, the trial started happening relatively quickly. And yes, the trial was televised because it was in California. So you had that every day. People were losing the trial, but then it was over. This is a case where it's technically still not,
Yeah.
still a cold case technically, right?
Yeah, exactly. I
Um,
wonder how that would transpire in today's environment with influencers and podcasters and
well,
different people
here
talking
we
about
are
cases.
doing a podcast today.
Right.
So, right.
Right.
So I'm sure if you search for some other podcasts, you're going to find others who've done the JonBenét Ramsey case. I think
Right.
it's just part of what the case is and what it's become about and what it's become to symbolize. So, but like I said, we want to start taking that in a different direction and talk about home and family safety.
So, accuracy wise, all of these reporters are outside. Everybody wants to break the news. Everybody wants to capture the nation's attention. Was everything accurate as it was being reported?
Accuracy is such a funny word, especially on this case, I think. But, I'm not sure accuracy is the word to use because you had all kinds of sensationalism. I mean, don't forget, this was while before the age of TikTok and other social media, you had very prominent tabloids.
Right.
Tabloids, for those too young to remember them, their bread and butter was sensationalism.
Right. And that can really start to affect everything. I think public perception, and it's why it's so important as consumers of
Absolutely.
this media to be patient, wait for the facts, not become like our own investigators of cases.
I was just going to say, right?
Remembering the people of
Think about it
importance.
this way. There's nobody, you couldn't switch. There was certain points in time when you couldn't switch the channel and you didn't see JonBenét
Right.
Ramsey's face on the television. And so that affects everybody in the country. That also includes the police officers and the investigators on the
Yeah,
case.
they're facing a lot of pressure to solve the
Right.
case.
Absolutely. Pressure, public pressure. I mean, they can't even go out with friends and somebody not ask them about the case.
Right.
It's 24/7.
And a question I get asked a lot, because like we mentioned, this was before my time. Why do we still talk about this case? What lessons can we really get from it?
I think one of the reasons is because you have this flurry of activity around the suspicion of the parents. And to some extent, if it were the parents, that sort of makes other parents breathe a sigh of relief. That could never happen to my kid. But then as more and more people started coalescing around maybe it wasn't the parents, and then DNA evidence showed that very likely it's not. Like I said, we still don't know 100%, but
Yeah.
as people started realizing, well, maybe it's not the parents, they're like, my God, that could be my daughter. That could be my kid, right?
Yeah. That, and I think, it also sheds light on, and I think we saw this recently with the Idaho 4 case, where the media really started to have their own theories and, understanding how the public reacts to tragedies and how police departments can manage some of these major investigations from a media perspective. I think that's another big lesson that can be talked about from the prevention angle.
Absolutely. And, we recently had on as a guest the ex wife of the DC sniper. And one of the things she reminded everyone for weeks and weeks, everybody was looking for a white van and they were looking for the wrong demographic profile. But as soon and so that's that same thing got repeated, was throwing the investigators off track because you do have that 24/7 news cycle
Mhm.
where they're like the white van, the white van, the white van. And I remember at the time a friend of mine said, you know what? It's probably not a white van. And because it was just going on too long. And then lo and behold, right, when more accurate information started
Right.
coming out, it wasn't too long before the killer was caught.
It's important.
It is important, and we got to be careful on any case like that, especially one that starts captivating our broader national
Mhm.
attention and focus. Police officers are police officers for a reason. They're detectives for a reason. They're trained. They know what they're doing. We got to let professionals have that
Agree.
space sometimes.
But yes, let's talk about child safety and, what prevention tips can be taken during this holiday season to help prevent a tragedy like this from happening.
Absolutely. And let's think about today. It's impossible for us not to mention, McGruff's big claim to fame was don't forget to lock your doors.
You know what I think? I think you forgot to lock your door. It's a funny thing. A lot of people do that. They forget. That's too bad because all crime needs is a chance. Don't give it the chance. Like, light up your doors. Lights make burglars nervous and make your windows secure. Say, I understand you're going to Peoria next week. While you're gone, have a neighbor keep an eye on your house. Pick up your mail, keep the place looking lived in, and use a timer to turn lights on and off. Hey, fudge brownies. And me on a diet. Oh, you don't know me, see. It's my job to teach you to protect yourselves. Make it your job to learn. Write to Box 6600 Rockville, Maryland. And one more thing. Lock your doors. That's an easy way to, take a bite out of crime.
People still forget. And we know that. There are a lot of things that people forget, but there's also a lot more people can do today, right?
Right, right.
We also know a lot more, and technology's also changed, right?
Like, routine, especially during the holiday, I think routines tend to change a lot. You're tired, there's people coming in and out of your house, just like in this scenario. And suddenly something really small like locking your doors gets overlooked. I know I have a automatic lock system at my house that just locks after 5 minutes. I'm sure I would forget to lock my doors if
Oh, I
that
mean,
ever.
I think forgetting to lock your door, your house door, your car door, it's pretty easy to do. And yeah, we're all guilty of that. But doing a nighttime check is a good tip. Make sure your windows, doors, porch lights are on, all that kind of thing. It just takes a few seconds before you go to bed.
It's the small things that matter, because I think in this case, we obviously don't know, and I don't know that we will ever know exactly what happened. But if it was a stranger that had broken into the home, or if it was a family member that found an open window and was able to do something, that's something that, we can take control of that in our own homes to ensure that our family members are in a safe position.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, it's not paranoia, right?
No,
I
no.
mean, we tease each other because Tatiana's a warrior, and more so than I am. But making things a routine, that is not paranoia. That's common sense and makes good sense.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, we, like you said at the beginning, we often think it can't happen to us, but talking about what happens if it does happen to us and having a plan in place of, where our phones are. Are the phones charged so we can call 911? Is there anywhere we can go to?
Absolutely, and even taking a step back, even just calling 911. One of the first comic books a kid in the US often receives is the McGruff How to Use 911 comic book, because they'll get that in school usually. Hopefully, if your school doesn't have it, get in touch with us. We'll make sure you do. But that's all about teaching a kid right to know from the start when they're old enough to use a phone that that's what you do. And sometimes it's those simple things that you get overlooked, and and encourage neighbors, watchful neighbors. They see something strange, it's okay. Those are the times to call 911. And you don't call 911 when you're lost my keys or something like
Yeah.
that.
And when you call, you don't it's hard to know what would happen in a situation like this, but trying to prepare so that when you call, you're not as panicked. You'll always be panicked, but having all the information that you need to have, if they're asking for the latest picture of your kid, making sure you have stuff that's readily available so that they can start their investigation in a proper manner.
Absolutely. And, going a little deeper into child safety and some other things, it's okay to talk to your child about staying safe. It's more important to do that than to not do it because you're concerned you might scare your child. You want to do it in an age appropriate way. There are different things a child can comprehend at age 6 compared to age 16. We all grow, we're all different. We are not static in time. We change, and that's just part of human life and human development. So you can tell a young child, make sure you always have to see an adult around. Make sure you always know how to reach an adult or know how to get help if you need it. That it's okay to ask for help. Everybody on occasion needs to ask for help, whether it's because you're having a bad day and your mental health is a little off, or you sense danger.
Absolutely. I think kids are I think we don't always give credit to kids, but they're very capable of getting this information and not losing their innocence. But having that information can make a difference if you ever find yourself in a situation like this. If your kid finds themselves in a situation with a stranger or a family member and they're uncomfortable, knowing that they can go to you and talk to you about it is so important in the prevention aspect.
Absolutely, and that's why having that the fact that you have that conversation with your child puts the notion in their mind that this is something I talk to mom and dad about,
Absolutely.
or grandma and grandpa or whoever. So let's go a little broader beyond the family. One of the linchpins to crime prevention and real community safety is the community.
Right? You
You
can't
know,
have public safety without
without the public.
like exactly.
Exactly. And then this case in particular, the public becomes the whole nation.
Yes.
But, it's also so separating all that crazy noise from the important stuff, the people who lived on that street in Boulder and can, do more.
Yeah, and I think that community in Boulder, from what I've read, was a very safe community. So I think everybody wants to believe it cannot happen to you, because the community you live in is safe, because you know your neighbors. But if that does happen, like you said, having the right trusted circle to call upon so
That
that it doesn't
does.
become
And we're probably all guilty of this today, where we don't live in Mayberry RFD anymore.
right.
People are busy. You don't but it's important. Take time to get to know your neighbors, know their names. A lot of times, people don't even know their neighbors' names, and you can't really watch out for someone if you don't know them a little bit. And that's what it's all about. If you go back to the early 80s and look at some of the old McGruff public service announcements, a lot of them focus on that. The family, the Gilstraps, who were away on vacation and they forgot to tell their neighbors they were going away. They get robbed. There's a whole bunch of things where it goes to. It was interesting too. A couple of years ago, there was a study that came out that it said neighborhoods where there were more dogs are safer. And of course, McGruff had to take credit for that. But the real reason behind that is simple. It's you got to walk your dog. So if you're out walking your dog, you're being more visible. And if another neighbor's out walking their dog, usually stop and chat with them, right?
Right. Yeah, you're not gonna yeah, I know all my neighbors through my dog. And I think something I'm really passionate about switching gears on the prevention side is how we consume media. Because I think something this case has really taught us is that when people speculate, and I think we've talked about this, like armchair detectives become a thing. It can really overshadow the facts of an investigation and make it really hard. And that I've seen that a lot on TikTok of people just speculating, double guessing police work. And I do think that can lead to a big problem for victims, for families, for people that are accused of a crime, like
Let's
the
go in,
family.
let's go into that a little deeper because for those who don't know, other than being an incredible podcast guest, Tatiana is also our media hound. So tell us a little bit more about how media consumption gets into the way or can help an
I
investigation.
think it can we've seen cases where it's incredibly helpful, right? The Thanksgiving case, for example, where we had America's Most Wanted put out the picture of Michael, and then that led to a tip that led to an arrest. That is a great way for us to share information from a trusted source and believe it and then be on the lookout. One way where it can really go wrong is it can be really easy to be on TikTok and hear somebody talk about a case and hear the theories and then go down the rabbit hole and believe everything they're saying. But at the end of the day, we are not the investigators on a case if we don't have all the details they have. So to sit behind a screen and pretend that we do can lead to other people believing you and other people who aren't doing their due diligence and research. And then that theory takes off and it hurts the family who hears it, or it gets brought up in the court, and then it all it takes time away from the investigators to do their job when
Right.
they're taking down leads from the armchair detectives.
Now, would you say that when somebody who is on social media a lot and they wants to maybe they someday want to be an influencer and get fame and fortune that way, the propensity of somebody like that, isn't it to sound as authoritative as possible?
Exactly.
And they're going to sound authoritative whether they're right or wrong or don't know if they're right
Right,
or wrong.
right. And there's something to be said for, yes, raising awareness, especially if we need to find who did it or, there's a tip line, but another one to just start with your own theories and try to change the outcome of a case because you believe a certain thing.
Right. There's an old expression, everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own set of facts.
Exactly.
And that,
Facts over theories always, is what I
right.
say.
um, it's a lot of time. I think what we lose sight of is that we're putting our compassion over curiosity. And again, a 6-year-old girl, brutally, tragically, her life taken from us, her family, friends, the world.
Yeah. We don't know who she could have been today.
And there you have it. So I know we've got people at home still celebrating the holidays,
Yeah,
right?
this episode will probably be out on Christmas Day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending Christmas with us.
So since this happened during the holidays and specifically Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, I thought it would be really good to help people have some reminders that they can use not just during the season, but year round.
Sure. We talked earlier about routines
Yes.
and holidays. You've got all kinds of happy, exciting things
Yeah.
going on. So when you have a lot of happy, exciting things go on, one of the first things that go out the window are routines, right?
Yes.
So let's remember that first routine, end of the day check. Windows, doors, porch lights on,
Yeah.
very basic. Alarm system. If you have an alarm system, turn it on. No matter how much money you're paying for the alarm system, it doesn't work if you don't use it, right?
Exactly. And I think the next one is in the holiday season. I mean, I think I've had friends in my house who bring somebody I've never met before to my house for a holiday party. So,
Okay, yeah, that
like
happens.
knowing who's going to be in your house, knowing where they are and when, if you have kids, like take the precautions needed for them to meet new people and talk to you if, something happens. I think that's all really important because you are going to be around a lot of people during the holiday season, most likely.
Absolutely. And you've got people traveling. You got people coming in from out of town. They don't know some basic things. They don't know where the drugstore is. They don't know where
Yeah.
the hospital is.
Yeah.
there's a lot you don't know when you're coming to a new town. So if you are visiting someone, take a few minutes to become familiar with where they live
Yeah,
and the important things that you need to know if something should happen.
absolutely.
And then, emergency numbers, 911, sometimes that's good too. You've got someone who needs help, the suicide prevention hotline, the poison control numbers, all those kinds of
Your
things.
kids should know your phone
Your
number
phone number.
to be able to call you if something.
And, guilty as charged. Do I know every phone number I should know given this day of cell phones and they're all saved in my little
Yeah.
device?
But
But
phones die all the time.
they die all the time.
All the
You
time.
misplace it even for a few minutes, and you need to know a number, or at least a few key numbers.
Yeah. Also, keep your phone charged. That's another
There's that
one.
too,
Yeah.
right? And especially true in the winter. If weather's bad, if there's a storm, power can go out.
Yeah.
And if your phone's not charged before power goes out, you're out of luck.
Right.
So it's really little things make a big difference,
They
right?
really do.
And then around the holiday times too, don't forget about decorations. Making sure you've changed a lot of things. A lot of people move furniture. You've got a tree up with lights. If you have a real tree, don't forget to water it. Switch out your lights I think it's every 5 years. But if you look at the packaging and the labeling, everything wears out. Wires wear out.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not still using the same lights you used when you were a kid.
Yeah. And I think this is separate from the case, but for the holiday season, if you have a family member who has dementia or memory problems, things change, routines change. So making sure that you are keeping a better eye on them or a good eye on them, and that they know what to do with
Let's talk
routines
about that
changing.
for a minute. How do you deal with that? I mean, that's a tough one, right?
That is really tough. We just had a case here in Fairfax County of a gentleman who was, I think, in his 70s, had dementia, and they found him 24 hours later with his car in a lake. So,
Right. And, have a buddy system, even within a
yeah.
family, I
Yes.
guess, too, I think is a good
Absolutely.
way to do it. But yes, everybody, holidays are a time to gather, especially when you do everyone wants to see their grandparents
Yeah.
or even great grandparents if you're lucky enough. As sadly as age increases, so does the likelihood of something like that setting in. Or even time, many, many families, more families than don't, have a family member who is suffering from some type of mental illness. Holidays can be a trigger. Their memories. They're wondering, that Christmas where they didn't get the gift they wanted, or something like that. Or it could be the family is going through grief, and holidays are especially a trigger point because you're imagining that person still there on the table, and there's nothing you can do about that. And that can take a tough emotional toll. So be aware of those and just watch out for each other.
Yeah. And we hope today's episode has helped you think a little differently. JonBenét Ramsey's life should be a reminder for all of us and the importance of safety. Instead of thinking about it from a sensational lens, we can really honor her life by making sure that we're taking the right steps this holiday season.
Let's do that. Let's help all our other McGruff Nation viewers out there. Fill up those comments with your own tips.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Right.
We can highlight them on
We'll
our social
highlight
media.
them. We'll send them out. Maybe we can compile a top 10 list and put that out. That sounds like a great idea. Well, we wish everybody a great and wonderful holiday season. If you still haven't gotten your loved ones that special gift, the McGruff shop is open 24/7.
There you have it.
There you have it. I mean, who wouldn't like a true crime prevention mug?
I have like 3.
You have 3.
Yes.
What's your favorite?
I think the dog bandana for my
The
dog.
dog bandana. Okay. That's a popular one. When I go to visit police stations, every police station has a service dog or a service
That's
dog
awesome.
unit. And the McGruff bandanas for the service dogs are a nice treat.
Good.
So maybe buy one for your favorite police officer.
There you go. I think that's a great idea.
Well, again, thank you all for tuning in. A joyful, wonderful holiday season. A happy new year. We'll come back to you again next week on True Crime Prevention. In the meantime, you can help us all take a bite out of crime.
That's an easy way to take a bite out of crime.